So my name's Trish McLeod. I'm a cisgendered white woman. My pronouns are she, her, and they. I'm heterosexual. I wear corrective lenses, and I have moderate hearing loss. I'm today 42 years old, but soon to be 43, a Canadian citizen with British Isle ethnic influence. I would consider my socioeconomic status to be high, and I don't identify with any specific religion, though I am very spiritual. I enjoy learning and I'm currently dedicated to expanding my practice in the field of strategic foresight and innovation, design thinking. And I'm a professional with a background in nursing who currently works and has worked with the Canadian Armed Forces in the Health Services Group. I love this analogy or a metaphor, pardon me, and I think it's extraordinarily accurate for the way that we work. And I couldn't help but think of people. So I have several different groupings of folks who I surround myself with. I'm proud to cultivate and maintain these networks of friends. And so first and foremost, my military professionals, both national and international, academic advisors, peers, colleagues, and folks who I've had the pleasure of leading and working with. Of course, service, my clients, for me in healthcare, that involves patients, but their families and their friends as well, who they consider part of their support network. And it would behoove me also to give a shout out to the healthcare professionals, both nationally and internationally specifically, that I've had the pleasure of working with. And I would say that my islands are unique in that they're quite vast. They're constantly evolving. And though the distances between any hop might be long, they're metaphorically short. They're just a text message away or a Facebook message away. And as somebody who identifies as a connector, I have very much benefited from this network, but I get just as much fulfillment out of keeping connected with this group as well. What others may learn is interesting. I believe that this archipelago is as powerful as any Google search, as an example, with the addition of lived experience to layer over top. So it would be interesting, I think, to put that theory to the test. But I do get a lot of folks will say a lot. Oh, it seems like you know everybody. But I guess I'm just fearless about contacting anyone. Jump in and play. Choose your adventure. So the best part about design is it's a practice or a praxis, and it is meant to grow. So there's no wrong way to do it. For me, I would highly recommend playing with a couple of design sessions, whether it's professional development, there's lots of online webinars and series like that, where you can see how design can be applied quickly. And then from there, follow your interest. You don't have to get any further than YouTube videos and webinars or academic reading, or you can take the stream that I've taken, and I decided to pursue a postgraduate degree as well, but it's not for everyone. And I think just staying curious, asking a lot of questions, but also being fearless to weigh in and provide your opinions as you move through the process too. That's how we learn. And you make us better. All these perspectives that come together to design make us better designers. So I'm going to talk a bit about what my current pursuits are, and they are centered around understanding, acknowledging, and deconstructing systemic racism within healthcare settings. And I've established myself as a leading voice in healthcare design and innovation with over 20 years in this service. My service to Canada in particular and practice have been grounded in leadership based around meaningful relationships and expressed through my work in building partner capacities amongst both domestic and international partners. And I've cultivated this approach through both formal education in nursing, defense, and now in design. And I've built a reputation for establishing sustainable and thriving healthcare teams that are responsive to the evolving health needs. And I'm grounded in an inclusive leadership style. I'm not afraid to jump in. I rumbled a little bit in my early postgraduate career with imposter syndrome and feeling like I didn't know, I didn't earn. They're going to find out that I don't know anything, and then you quickly realize everyone feels that way, uh, and then you can move through the space. So I've definitely taken that armor off, stepped into a space of vulnerability, and now I'm perfectly happy to jump in and contribute, but also to ask lots of questions to learn from others. So though new to design, I still have a lot of experience to bring to the table. But I would also say too that for those who are new to design or don't have 20 years of experience, you have equally just as much perspective to bring to the table to help influence and shape my worldview and those around you. This is a tough question because there's so many great examples out there. And I wanted to tie this one back to my current area of pursuit and where I like to ground myself as I get inspired to take on new challenges. And it is tough work working in social change, but there is so much benefit from it. So when I think about that, I think about accessibility. So instead of centering a design project around able-bodied folks as an example, if we shift instead to looking at accessibility as the benchmark, we can see how design can benefit for all through three examples that I like to constantly remind myself about. And that's the evolution of cruise control. Cruise control was developed for the visually impaired to overcome motion sickness. And I can tell you, I definitely benefit from cruise control on a daily basis. And now with even some of the more evolving cruise control pieces with the adaptive following and pilot assist, it's just so interesting to see how things continue to grow. Text messaging was developed for the hearing impaired. And then our sidewalks, the curbs, and how they've come down for wheelchairs to come through and cross streets has benefited, parents or primary caregivers with strollers, walkers, even myself as somebody who's left-handed and tends to trip on just the cracks and curbs. All of those three things are the three places that I like to remind myself when I feel the pull to design or think about a project for the majority, and instead of think of how things can be more accessible for all. So if we focus in on those pieces, the benefits are just amazing. So I'm taking the currently with my research and my research partner, we're looking at inclusive, diverse, equitable, and accessible healthcare for all in the military setting. My partner is not a military by background, but we are building and partnering with the Canadian Armed Forces, the way that they look at patient-partnered care. So patient-partnered care and elevating patients as partners in their own healthcare is not a new concept. It's one that's been evolving since the early 2010s internationally. And so we are going to be taking that idea, or the inclusive, diverse, equitable, and accessible lens, to see if there are ways that we can improve partnerships for all in that environment. So I'm pretty excited to explore that space, especially in the social context of 2021, post-pandemic and post the death of George Floyd, as well as the obligations we have as Canadians towards our calls to action, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I'm very inspired to do that work. So I think it can be awfully, it can sound very trendy, or the words can be very buzzword. So I think for some folks, and I'm sure I've probably thrown a lot of them around today, and that can be kind of off-putting, as anything can be, as far as the jargon goes. So I think reading or not experiencing design can be off-putting. So I would ask folks as they're approaching these things, to really try to center in humility and curiosity. It is a nonlinear experience, and it is super fun. Yeah, so I'm new to academia. I graduated my undergrad in 2002, and I took a large academic pause between then and 2018. In 2018, I began my Master's of Defense through the Royal Military College of Canada here in Toronto. Or no, I'm not in Toronto, but when I was in Toronto. And it was a return to a style of writing that I had long said goodbye to. And of course, from an IT perspective, almost 20 years without being in school. Some of us didn't even have computers, and we had been handing in handwritten documents and assignments. So it was a bit of a learning curve for me. And I will say I'm not really all that proud of my first marks and my first iteration of first semester. But what I am quite proud of is I accepted the feedback. It was a tough nut to learn from, but I asked for help too. So my academic advisors, my military faculty, and the peers of my class all gave me some pretty concrete feedback that I was able to put into practice pretty quickly. And we're all learning, I guess, is where it comes from. So I'm pretty proud of the work that we did as a collective in my last role with the military was working in a primary care clinic in Toronto. In early 2019, roughly around this time, I was sat down by one of our one of our psychologists, Dr. Althea Montero, who let me know that she had been treating several patients who'd experienced racialized trauma. The military is very, very motivated and committed to increasing our creating positive, psychologically safe spaces to build a future that is inclusive and diverse. And the only way we're going to do that is by changing our current culture that signals inclusion and diversity. It isn't a shopping trip of just creating and collecting individuals. We really need to ensure that our environment is modifying. And that was one of the biggest lessons when Dr. Montero set me down was how innocuous some of these experiences had been, but there was a very concrete way that patients were experiencing these things collectively. And in a healthcare setting, my role is not just to provide healthcare. So we provided some amazing healthcare to these members, and we started to work on our ability to provide those particular services for racialized trauma, but also to advocate to employers, because we have a dual role. We provide, occupational advice to employers. The Canadian Armed Forces is an employer, and we're excluded from the Health Act. So we also provide health advice or healthcare. So in the role of providing health advice, all the while maintaining patient privacy, we began a campaign to engage with a chain of command. And at this time, this was pre the murder of George Floyd, as well as the pandemic. So it was a little bit of a slow burn to take off, but with those two elements that added clear fuel to the fire and pressure, we moved into a space whereby we gained a lot of traction. And over the course of about 18 months, we developed a workshop for ourselves with our flanking stakeholders, with some design methodology, just a little bit, to be better providers for racialized members, but also to create space for our own staff to feel safe. And I'm very, very proud of that workshop. So the pilot workshop kicked off in June, and I believe I've moved on from that unit since then. But the workshop itself is continuing to evolve. And in fact, I will be meeting with them next week just to see where they're at and get up to speed. Because in my new role in a different geographic region, I intend to keep that torch moving along. What hasn't the pandemic taught me? So for me, the pandemic came, and I think everyone has their own unique story and experience that they will have lived. It was not easy for anyone, and it's still not easy space to be in. But for me, in particular, being a commanding officer of a unit in the middle of a pandemic, providing an essential service, I didn't have a lot of home support. My husband had deployed for a 12-month deployment to Amman, Jordan, where he did amazing work. Couldn't be more proud of that. But I found myself working pretty late nights and persistently through many weekends as we moved through providing health support to the region of Toronto, getting a lot of our military folks ready to head out the door. And I'll freely admit that that came at a mental health care cost for myself. So I learned that I was not immortal and that it was completely okay to ask for help, which I did. So I came forward and I received some amazing high grade mental health care, and my team was incredibly supportive. Um, so yeah, and I think I'm a much stronger person for that experience as well. I wouldn't wish the pandemic on anyone else, or actually not having access to their to their spouse for a year, but it is definitely an experience that I have grown, and I like that Japanese bowl metaphor of my bowl is now being put back together with some amazing gold and platinum, with more tools and more resilience, and of course a better fear and a better respect for being not fearful in the face of challenges.